Welcome to the Garlic Marketing Show. I'm Garlic, and I've got an incredible guest. Not only is he incredible business-wise, but he's an incredible person, a longtime friend of mine, a fantastic guy, all around one of my favorite people, Kit Gray from PodcastOne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. Really exciting to spend some time with one of my long time friends, Ian. So good to see you, buddy.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. I know. It's like, it's how time passes by fast. Seems like just yesterday we met, but it's been decades. But, Ket, before we get into it, I want to talk about where podcasting is going, because you see a lot of it. I mean, obviously people are starting podcasts left and right, how it can work for a business, how you're seeing it, how to get traffic, how to monetize it, all that stuff. But tell us a little bit about PodcastOne and how you got it started.
Well, I went to business school where you and I went to school together, and I went off to work for a division of iHeart, which is like the big radio conglomerate across the country, and learned about representing radio stations and figuring out really where the ad money is on a national level, dealing with media agencies and planners and buyers and clients, and really kind of understanding, okay, what is the process to get money, and then how do you facilitate deals to get the most amount of money you possibly can. Learned that business, lived in Chicago, New York, Boston, then started in LA for a new division for them back in 2004, 2005. I quickly knew that radio, especially living in Los Angeles, being a kid from Boston, my options were listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers over and over again on K-Rock, or Laker talk with They Hate the Lakers, or Spanish programming. So those were my options on the radio.
Fred Toucher wasn't around then, was he?
Funny enough, I listen to Fred almost every morning going to work now, because you can do that. You can live in LA and listen to a radio station in Boston on demand. And oh man, Fred is so great. And there really was some characters in that fraternity house we all lived in, for sure. Yeah.
I know. It's crazy to think about that. Yeah, Fred Toucher lived like 3 doors down.
Yeah.
And
we really had some meetings of the minds, and we didn't even know it back then. So it was it was, Fred sounds like the same guy. He's so funny. He really is great. So yeah, that was my thing. I came out to LA and I was driving around the city, going to meetings and business meetings, and realized that selling radio was going to be a tough putt for me, because I just didn't really believe in it anymore. I believe strongly in the audio business, and when a guy named Adam Carolla, who I still work with, some 10 years later now, almost 15 years later, Adam was really the first guy that did podcasting on a mass scale, and it was because he got fired. He was actually the West Coast version of taking over for Howard Stern, when Howard left to go to Sirius. And when he got fired by CBS, he started a podcast, and this was when you had to actually take your iPod, not an iPhone, your iPod, and plug it to your computer and download it in. And I was like, wow. To do this, though, it was really a great experience, because you could then listen to it in your car. So usually through like one of those like tape machines, right? Like that you had to hook up,
yeah.
There's no Bluetooth or any of that kind of stuff now. But so that was the process. And in ad selling, which I'm a sales guy, that's what you want. You want to reach guys that you really, really know you have. And if someone like Adam Carolla could get somebody to go through that process to listen to his show, there's something there, right? So I reached out to Adam just on an email, still working at iHeart, and he got back to me, and I actually introduced him to all the LegalZooms, the Stamps.coms, the Citrix, GoToMeeting, GoToMyPC, all of those brands before anyone else started doing that in podcasting, and really proved the model. There was a guy that I know well who ran the Citrix account up in Santa Barbara. I went up to him. We did a test, a 12-week test for each deal, and I was hopeful it would work. And you basically get a free trial, so you'd have to put your name in, and they saw such great ROI that they offered me a 2-year deal right then. And that's when I knew I had a business, right? So I then went out
That's
to
awesome.
Chris Hardwick, Mark Maron, Bill Burr, CBS for 60 Minutes, and created a network, just like radio stations would create a network, and then sell those to those brands and make some money. And long story short, I got pretty close with Adam Carolla, and Adam, if you guys remember Loveline, which was a huge show on MTV, and with Dr. Drew, and it was on K Rock out here, and it was really a big deal. Um, that was all started by a guy named Norm Pattis, who owned and ran Westwood One. He found Westwood One, which is still around now. He knew Adam, and he said, "Who's making all this money for Adam in the podcasting space?" That was me. So we created a business together. He threw some money down, and then we built a company now that does, I don't know, 30 million in revenue, and has 200 some shows and employs 40 to 50 people across the country. And we're kind of growing at a rapid pace. We were just acquired by a company called Live by Live, which is actually changing their name to Live One, publicly traded company, really in the music technology space, talent management, in the sense that they go, film concerts, right? So if you're, there's a great show in Chicago actually this weekend, that they're going to be able to distribute globally, over the internet for anyone to go visit, right? So there's a cool fit there between us, in the sense that there's a new business in podcasting. It's not just doing a podcast, it's merch, live shows, it's touring, it's subscription models, TV now and video, right? There's now the IP business, which is, something that we're getting into at PodcastOne, where, we work with people that have done shows for Amazon and Netflix and create shows like Bad Bad Thing, which is done by Barbara Schroeder. And she wrote and did Evil Genius on Netflix. And, now we're out shopping that particular podcast as something, bigger. So the business is just evolving. Still probably in the third inning, of a 9-inning game, and there's scale. It's still there's a lot to it. I mean, like, programmatic and technology has just expanded quite nicely. That there's transparency in who's seeing your ads, and all that. There's transparency in numbers and downloads and how many people are listening and targeting. So I can deliver ads just to LA if I wanted to, or just to Florida. That's a whole business that's taking off, which is allowing like local networks to be formed now. And so it's really rolling. And honestly, it's really the on-demand, nature of our world, where we're all a little spoiled now. We want what we want when we want it. Well, now you got it in the audio space too, so it's pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's amazing. I mean, because you saw it really, what 6 years ago, no one knew. I mean, very few people knew what a podcast was, much less how to listen to one. And where would you say were the big upticks in podcast use? Where did you see when people really started to use podcasts?
Well, when I started with Adam had, maybe 50, 60,000 people listening a night to him, right? And which, when you think about it, is a big number.
That's a great number, right? Imagine that's a stadium.
Right. So now, it's 5x that, right? It's massive. And some shows, they're doing 1.5 million, 2 million listeners an episode, right? Like, if you look at the deals Joe Rogan struck, or people like Ben Shapiro and Dax Shepard and Conan O'Brien. So what really has kind of this became more or less, at the beginning, was a lot of comedians trying to sell tickets to their shows and having a good time on podcasts, right? And that was really what it was. There was some sports stuff, mostly male programming. Just like most trends, it starts with guys and then evolves into women, and then they rule the world, right? So So
Exactly.
that's where we're at. We got ahead of it on PodcastOne. Norm, who I talked about earlier, he and I went to New York City 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and just did a road tour of all the major media agencies, Verizon, Mediacom, you name it, Havas. We went there, met with all the top people, told them what we were going to do, asked them what they wanted, and everything was find moms, women. All right. And so with that, we started, doing things like a bunch of the Housewives shows. Caitlin Bristow, who's a Bachelorette and Dancing with the Stars champion, has a huge podcast with us. The Lady Gang. So we just did a deal with Baby Mama No Drama, which is like the MTV, women that had kids really early and their life experience. So it's a lot of that. There's the Lady Gang Network. There's really this true crime network. We work with A&E and do cold case files, and I Survived, and hopefully a lot more with them. Women love the true crime stuff, and so that's exploding. So now when we go to brands, it's not, no disrespect to the stamps.coms, and those guys are great and they play great CPMs and it's a great business and great products, but now you've got an influx of Home Depots and Geicos and Hyundais and Budweisers and Miller, right? So like that, the seltzer world, that that has exploded, right? So that real money now is pumping into it, where you're seeing not millions, but you're going to see billions in the next couple of years spent in the space, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like you said, you got a captive audience. We're all driving around listening to podcasts. I listen to them nonstop, audiobooks and podcasts nonstop. I don't even listen to music that much anymore. Where do you see the format going? Because it's I think we all gravitated towards a traditional show format in the beginning, and you don't have to do that. That's the beauty of it, right? You can do whatever you want format
Yeah.
wise.
It's really what you feel comfortable with. And there's like, I mean, look, Joe Rogan does like 3 hours, right? Some people do an hour, some people do a half hour, so it really comes down to like what feels comfortable for you and your host. There's really no time frame, there's no clock per se, right, in the radio world. So you can kind of talk about what you want and when you want and how you want. I look at podcasting as, and we do this in our sales deck, as just really an extension of your social media, but a stronger one, right? Because you actually have time to communicate, beyond a 30-second TikTok video or an Instagram post, like, or a tweet that God knows where that's going to go in the world. But like, you actually get to have a conversation with your community, and you feel like you're in the room with them. You really do, and that's why these live shows are now popping up, which is crazy. You're basically going to an event where you're just seeing, some random people just kind of talk for a couple hours or an hour, and but people love it, and it's the new way to learn and communicate. And I think with COVID, that was a scary time for obviously everybody, but business, and it was wild because we had a bunch of advertisers that one couldn't fulfill deals, based on, shirts that couldn't get shipped from China or wherever. Like that was a real scary time because everybody's trying to pull out of their advertising commitments, which is how we run our business. But we were back in like 2 months, 2.5 months, growing, and didn't really see, skip a beat. People had different consumption habits. They weren't doing it in the morning driving to work. They were doing it maybe later in the afternoon, walking the dog or working out, or, but it became part of people's lives in a different way. And as we navigate through the times of COVID, if we go back to offices, or maybe we're not going to do that, I don't know, that we'll see. This is a great way to communicate with people. And it's just a little different, I'm so passionate about the audio space. It's it goes back to me driving around with my dad to tennis practice when I was a little kid and not really having anything to talk to my dad about because it was just a weird, awkward time. But when sports radio was on, then when they did a break, I could talk to him about the Red Sox, and it all was good. So it's it's such a great thing, and I love it. I even you remember the old like Lone Ranger stories and classic radio, and you and I we missed all that. We're not that old.
Yeah. No,
but
no,
we got
not
to
that
hear
old.
a little bit of that once in a while, like just towards the tail end, being kids, like you'd hear it just randomly and you'd be like,
Yeah.
this is awesome, right? How come we didn't do more of that? Well, now you can, and that's kind of the neat thing.
Yeah.
So
I know you have things like Serial that kept you I think that was the big one for my wife Jess, was because we'd be sitting in the driveway listening to that end of that episode, and it was so good, and we'd listen to them all. I mean, listen to like the Smartless podcast, and they're great podcasts, and it's perfect for, like you said, for conversations. And what I like versus, because I listen to audiobooks, is that we don't have to. It sparks conversations, but like you said, but we don't have that big commitment. And so, I mean, do you, as far as marketing the podcast goes, are you marketing the network, or are you marketing the podcast? How are you driving viewership and listenership to the podcast?
Yeah, so that is a really hard thing to do. There's hundreds of thousands of great podcasts out there, literally hundreds of thousands, and
there's 500,000 podcasts or something like that.
I mean, and they just keep on growing and growing, and some are great, right? And you'll just never be discovered because there's too much out there. So what we did, and what our there's two real ways to do it now, but what we do at PodcastOne, I mean, we have a whole marketing division. I have like 4 or 5 people that are just responsible for marketing programs and show launches and special guests and talent booking and making sure guests come on and actually do their social media as well. That's what being part of a network like PodcastOne brings to the table, right? That's our cut of a revenue share. And we're responsible to do that and use our expertise and learnings and ability to use volume in terms of buying impressions to do decent deals, right? So we do that, and part of our deal with all the shows that we have is any empty inventory, we get promotional spots. So we're constantly promoting new shows or special events in our network. Now, what we found, there's companies like Wondery and others that are spending tons of money with us to market their shows. So we're doing the same thing too. So we'll buy media on like-minded podcasts, and we see, of all the things, Facebook and Google search and Instagram, radio, TV, podcast advertising for podcasting by far, it blows it away. So it's understanding that is huge. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense.
Totally. And there's you can game it. There's plays, like you can play the math game and buy impressions at a certain level and figure out what a listener's worth and be very calculated on that. And the smart shows know how to do that too. So,
and as far as like platforms go, I mean, and people always ask me this because we do tons of stuff on YouTube. And I'm hearing more and more people that they're like, yeah, I've listened to your podcast on YouTube, and they're using that. Where do you see the future of the platform?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's all these companies. There's Libsyn, there's Megaphone, there's Art19. Launchpad One is my company's platform. We have our own platform. And when you mean platform, just so people understand it, is basically where the show's hosted and then it's distributed to Apple and Spotify and iHeart and media players. If you have your own website or social media channels that you can push this stuff out to, that is really like what a platform is. And there's a lot to that, right? Like there's the programmatic side of it. There's the numbers count. There's the CMS and looking at your numbers and what you want to see. And pulling ads out, putting ads in. There's all of that to it, and each one is a little different. YouTube's an interesting one, right? Because, look, a podcasting is an audible play, and everything is really in that space, in terms of ads and ad buying right now. But we are doing a lot of what we call vodcasts. And it's funny, you don't even need to. You could just have a podcast, nothing visually, and you could actually just put it on YouTube. And we do that with things like Still and Cold Steve Austin's podcast, right? And we still see huge consumption on that. And really that comes down to Google, especially YouTube being, I think it's the number 2 search engine in the world, right? So like that's a great discovery play. I'm still particular because YouTube controls the ad, the ad world in their sense. Like, I can't get in and do any kind of like programmatic buying unless they do it, or if I wanted to do a targeted ad buy through, my show on YouTube, I can't do that. So there's definitely limitations to it, but it's a great discovery platform, and it's the people like Ben Shapiro and us and Rogan, they're doing their ads and they'll have a title card there and they'll do the ad and video, and you can effectively get more money from that. So that's kind of the play there.
Nice. And so tell me, I mean, where, growing a big business like PodcastOne, where were your challenges? What were the biggest challenges in growing the business? Oh,
wow. Well, when I started it with Adam, contracts and understanding accounting, I have an MBA in finance, but until you sit down and actually do, QuickBooks and go through that, that's part of really understanding a business. And I think why I'm good at my job, or I believe I'm good at my job, is because I've gone through every single level of the process, from signing a deal with talent to getting an advertiser to running it in a show, switching copy out, cutting it, getting it to an advertiser, posting it out, invoicing them, collecting the money. There are all these things, that's just part of the process, and why, I still just know it unlike anybody else, because not many people have ever really done that, right? So like that was just a great learning process, and I think that all those challenges kind of make you better at your job down the road. So I guess that was like a challenge. I didn't have any money, like I was, not married or any of that stuff, without kids at that time in my life, but, so it was fine. But I didn't have the money to lock up an Adam Carolla for, a 3-year deal that's 7 figures plus, right? Like, almost 8, right? So like it definitely 8. So, I didn't have that kind of money. So I knew that there was a lot of anxiety there, because I started this and I didn't know how long I could keep it until somebody like iHeart or CBS figured out what I was doing, and they have endless amounts of money, or Spotify, right, where they can just throw it at it and they can take your business away ultimately. I got lucky. I met the right guy at the right time. We hit it off, and we were able to build the business that way.
Yeah, but I mean, definitely right place, right time. But you had to hustle too, obviously.
See, everything. I mean, look, everything in life. If you just work hard and you're a good person and you try to be, a good person, you're gonna be all right. You just got to keep working hard, and that's everything in life. And I mean, we were in college together, and we had a lot of fun, but you were always doing really well in school, and I was doing extra stuff too, and we tried to get the most out of our buck being there. And I think I learned that from my parents. My mom, my dad owns his own company, and you just, that's who you are, and you thank them for that, and you just kind of keep on grinding. But if I wasn't going to do this, I mean, I had to figure something else out. So,
and if you were to start in the podcast business today and restart, tell me what would you do? Like if you're starting from scratch right now, would you get in podcasting?
Yeah. I mean, look, I still believe in it. I still think it's the best thing to go out and sell. Like if as a sales guy, like I want to go into a room and say, I have a very good audience, a strong audience, maybe not the biggest audience in the world, but I can bring you, you know, 1 million people that are going to listen to this spot that really love this person. And that's just a winning recipe when you go into any brand meeting or any marketing meeting, right? So
Yeah.
I definitely do. You know, running a big company, it has its ups and downs, right? I mean, much of my job now is being, you know, a counselor to employees, which I love them all very much, but it's not me and my dog in Marina Del Rey in my condo just grinding away, cutting deals and cashing checks. Now it's a lot of different things. So
it's HR and
it's negotiating employment agreements. It's dealing with bosses. It's dealing with stockholder meetings. You know, so
yeah.
It's great, but it's different. You know, but podcasting is. You know, I think we'll probably get into it later, but there's so many different ways that businesses can use this to communicate to their clients, to their staff. Like,
yeah, let's talk about that. So, yeah. I mean, it's perfect timing. It's a good segue. It's like you've done this before.
Yeah. On the head.
So, you know, how can businesses use podcasting? Where do you see the big opportunities for businesses? Like, I'm going to start a podcast right now.
Yeah. You know, it's a great idea, right? It's a great idea. You know, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson should have a podcast. It is. Yep. It's a great idea. It's a great way for him to implement a strategy and go through the strategy and have it recommunicated and make it work for everybody on their time. And I think it's a great way. Now, you could talk to your clients. You could talk to, you know, certain clients that you have that are, you know, really involved in your business. You can involve them. It makes closer relationships with them. I think, you know, with your staff, you can do that too. I mean, it's a great way for them to have a better understanding of the philosophies of the business. It's much more casual than, you know, an earnings call or something like that. You can have speakers on. It kind of libraries that kind of content. You can go back and reflect on certain things. But nonetheless, you can market it. I mean, we've done it for clients like Microsoft, 1-800-Flowers. Trader Joe's had a great podcast that they did where, you know, it's very much understanding the Trader Joe's culture and why they do what they do. So, you know, a little bit more about why, you know, when I go shopping there, all of why it's designed the way it is. I think it's kind of cool, you know.
No, that's cool. I gotta check that one out.
Yeah, that's a neat one. You know, Microsoft wanted to do a cybersecurity podcast, right? Where we would bring in a specialist and then bring some people from Microsoft in, and you know, they are obviously a huge company, and being able to distribute that on their social channels to their staff and clients and alike to, you know, make it a community. And I businesses are going to have a harder time, you know, with COVID and people living all over the world, communicate. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to do it, in my opinion. I also think I have good friends that, you know, have made millions and millions of dollars by doing podcasting, not just on advertising, but they own mortgage companies, and they were just, hey, I need a way to, you know, market my mortgage company, but I'm actually a good talker and I can, you know, bring some value that way. There's a lot of opportunities there, you know, in doing that. So those are all the different ways.
I mean, and I think, you know, I interviewed Jeremy Weiss about this, and they're an expert, you know, and they do a lot of podcast production for businesses. And I think the biggest one for me has been networking. The people I meet, you know, I get to talk to you, you know, we talk otherwise, but I get to talk to you about business and have a different format of conversation. I think it's a fantastic networking tool.
Oh, it's great. I mean, especially in this world where conferences aren't, I went to a conference in Nashville recently for the podcast movement, and it was great to see people again. It really fantastic, but it's not everybody was there, and there's, people are scared of COVID still. Totally understand it. This is a way you can do that type of stuff and just connect with people a different way. I think it's fantastic, and it's only going to evolve. It's only getting better with technology like the Riverside app that we're using right now. This is fantastic.
Yeah, this is a great piece of technology. Hopefully, Riverside reaches out and sponsors me. But speaking of sponsorships, I mean, you're an ad sales master. Should small businesses be thinking about sponsorships? Who should be thinking about sponsorships and monetizing in that way? And how do you go about doing that? What's the best way?
Yeah, so small businesses absolutely should be doing this. There's going to be a transition into podcasting, advertising, not on just a national basis, but a local basis. We've done it for years. We have the scale, right, to put a network together of listeners in Southern California. So I can go down to Southern California Toyota dealerships who all over TV and radio, but I can say, well, why not get 5 million impressions in Los Angeles of podcast listeners now introduced to your spot? And they're like, that's great. I go, there's no SoCal Hyundai in there or Nissan. You're the one, right? So that being able to have that scale is the key, right? So not many places have that. So that's the hard thing. So you'll start to see now with iHeart, Odyssey, which is Intercom, used to be Intercom, Cumulus, Westwood One. A couple of these bigger groups are going to be able to do that kind of stuff and use their local staff to sell that inventory. The key is, do you have the inventory, right? There aren't that many people that live in Nashville, for instance, that are listening to podcasts yet still. So you got to get scale, right? So you got to go to certain places that can bring in, our company. We have a deal. We have our podcasts. We have local podcasts like Hubbard Broadcasting, which owns a percentage of PodcastOne. They have WTOP. They're in Chicago with the Drive. They're in Phoenix. They're in Seattle. So what we're able to do is take a group of podcasts there, repurpose a bunch of their radio stations. So if you don't hear them in the morning, you can actually listen to them on demand, and then supplement that with all the PodcastOne network shows of listeners in Phoenix. Plus, there's another marketplace that I can tie into using, our relationships to other podcasts that are on a hosting platform. So I can now go to, the Phoenix Toyota dealership and say, I've got, 2-3 million impressions a week I can deliver, which is worth their time, right? If it's 500 listeners and 4 of them are in Phoenix, no one's going to give you the time, right? So you've got to find the places that have scale. That being said, if I'm a small business and I can get into that world, even on a CPM basis, even with low numbers, you're going to see great returns because people just love those podcasts. They just do, whatever they are.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. And, we got to go, but I've got a few minutes left real quick.
Sure.
We're marketing stories is one of the themes for this season here. Crazy marketing stories, failures, funny things you did. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but all the marketing you've done, is there something that was surprised you, blew it out of the water, or something that you expected to work and you dumped a lot of money in and it didn't work?
Yeah.
I'm sure that never happened, right? You've never spent money on marketing and it didn't work.
No, they all work, right? Everything works. You just batting 1,000. No, look, I would put if I had my own small business or business, I'd put every dollar that I have into podcast marketing, no doubt. TV, radio, banners, social media, waste of time, in my opinion. You'll see, you'll see your best returns in podcasting. I've done stupid things. I mean, we bought a billboard on Sunset for a podcast launch because talent wants it. You do things sometimes that you know aren't going to work for the greater good, right? Those type of things. As far as campaigns, podcasting, and this is what's going to be a bit of the challenge, because unless you really have a relationship with the talent, that's the key, man. I mean, like, if iHeart and all these like thousands of podcasts they have, but can they really pick up the phone and call and say, "Hey, Adam, I need you to do this," right? For Adam, we did Adam Corolla, Corolla, like Toyota Corolla. We did a Nissan Versa campaign years ago. And so we changed Adam's show name to the Adam Versa Show, right? And like literally did like a whole thing on that, and then a video series where he was driving and he's a car guy, so he's talking about all the great things and the value of the Versa. And you're able to do fun, cool things that way. Not all brands like that. KFC still mad at me right now because I didn't have the chicken, right on the set for a Pitbull podcast. So, it depends on how things work,
Yeah. So I'm gonna tease this out as why KFC is still mad at the founder of PodcastOne.
They're mad at me. Pitbull's mad at me because the studio smelled like chicken. Dude, I thought it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. I thought everyone would like it, Sometimes yeah.
Awesome. Well, Kit, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. I love you. I hope you're well, man.
Love you too.
Take care of yourself,
thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, and thank you all for taking Kit and I on our journey. This has been Iron Garlic and the Garlic Marketing Show.